The movie opens at a center for children with autism where a military man and his wife are seeking help for their young son, Chris. The father, whose life has been dictated by structure and relocation, explains that the boy struggles with change, something that's been unavoidable due to the frequent moves required by his military career. The center's staff suggests that Chris might thrive better in a stable, consistent environment and offer to take him in, but his father adamantly refuses. To him, life is harsh, and he believes Chris should grow up facing that reality, not be sheltered from it.
If loud noises and bright lights bother him, he needs more of it, not less.
While this discussion happens, young Chris sits on the waiting room floor, quietly working on a puzzle. As he methodically assembles the pieces, he rocks gently and murmurs an old nursery rhyme. Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday. But just as he's about to complete it, he realizes a piece is missing. Panic begins to rise. For Chris, the absence of order, of pattern, can be deeply upsetting. Just before his distress spirals into a full meltdown, a nearby girl, silent and observant, notices his agitation and gently hands him the missing piece. The moment is small but powerful, revealing how delicate and rigid his inner world is. Years pass. Chris is now an adult, working as a quiet but incredibly meticulous accountant. In one scene, he assists a couple with their tax filings, demonstrating not just competence, but an uncanny precision. The couple is so grateful that the husband invites Chris to visit their property to engage in some target practice. A seemingly casual gesture that reveals far more about Chris than his day job does. Elsewhere, Ray King, a senior figure in the U.S. Treasury Department, summons a data analyst named Mary Beth Medina to his office. He commends her talents, but questions why she hasn't pursued more prominent roles. During their conversation, King reveals he has access to her sealed juvenile records, which show she was once arrested for a violent offense. Using this knowledge, he pressures her into assisting him on a classified assignment, identifying and exposing a mysterious accountant who not only launders money for international criminals, but also, disturbingly, eliminates threats when necessary. Medina is given 1 month to discover the man's identity, or risk losing her career. Back at his modest home, Chris continues his isolated routine. His life is a series of rituals. He prepares simple meals, adheres to a rigid bedtime process, and inflicts physical discomfort on himself, blasting heavy metal music and using a rod to strike his legs, a painful ritual that seems to ground him. During one of these moments, he's flooded with memories of a traumatic Christmas, his mother walking out on the family. It's a wound that still aches. The next day, Chris visits the couple's property and demonstrates stunning marksmanship. Every shot he takes hits the mark without hesitation.
Not on my best day.
Afterwards, he heads to his storage unit. But this isn't just a space for spare boxes. It's a heavily secured trailer housing a staggering collection of rare art, stacks of currency from around the globe, and a personal armory. It becomes clear that Chris's life straddles two extremes: calm precision and hidden danger. As he rests inside the trailer, memories of his time in prison surface. We see him learning valuable life skills from a fellow inmate, lessons that would later serve him in laundering money and navigating the criminal underworld. His thoughts are interrupted by a phone call from a British-accented woman, his elusive business partner. She warns him to diversify his client base to avoid scrutiny. Though he prefers the familiar, Chris agrees. Soon, Chris is brought on by a high-tech prosthetics firm where an internal accountant, Dana, has uncovered irregularities in the company's finances. Intrigued, Chris accepts the task of investigating. Meanwhile, Medina is scanning through security footage when she spots a partial image of a man she believes might be the accountant. She forwards it to facial recognition experts for analysis. In Switzerland, another player emerges. Braxton, a deadly enforcer with his own brand of justice, confronts a corrupt businessman, warning him to stop his shady practices or face fatal consequences. Back at the robotics firm, Chris meets Dana, who's asleep in the conference room. Their introduction is awkward.
Hi.
Chris makes it clear that he works alone. Undeterred, Dana remains friendly, even trying to initiate conversation over lunch. Chris attempts to reciprocate, but social interaction doesn't come easily to him. Medina soon receives results from her face recognition request. Not only do they confirm the accountant's image, but they also provide an audio clip captured during one of his hits. In the recording, the accountant chants softly to himself, the same Solomon Grundy rhyme, before executing his target. This chilling clue brings Medina closer to understanding her target. Later, Chris pulls Dana into his math-covered workspace and explains that he's uncovered a shell company siphoning funds from within the organization. But before he can finish, one of the firm's executives barges in and halts the investigation.
Who did it? Best guess.
I don't guess.
That night, another shareholder, one linked to the embezzlement, is visited by Braxton, who coerces him into suicide as a way to preserve his family's financial future. Returning to work the next day, Chris is devastated to find that his elaborate calculations were erased. He's told the guilty party confessed and took his own life, but Chris isn't satisfied. His need to complete the pattern, to follow the logic to its conclusion, remains unfulfilled. That night, his stress peaks. He returns to his brutal nightly routine of sensory overload and self-discipline. The following day, someone begins tailing Chris, but he pays it no mind and returns to the couple's home for another shooting session. Inside the home, however, danger awaits. Two thugs are holding the couple hostage. When one tries to lure Chris inside, he neutralizes the threat from afar with a single shot. He then confronts the second thug, extracts information, and after learning Dana is also a target, kills him.
Kill you both. That's all I know.
Chris races to Dana's apartment, arriving just as two men posing as delivery workers force their way in. Dana locks herself in the bathroom, buying just enough time. Chris storms in, dispatches the attackers, and urges Dana to flee with him.
We should go.
He takes her to his trailer, telling her to wait outside, but curiosity leads her inside where she sees the full extent of Chris's double life. Stacks of money, weapons, art. He answers few of her questions, staying emotionally distant. Meanwhile, Medina receives new insight from a voice expert who believes the accountant's chanting is linked to neurological trauma. Later, Chris and Dana take refuge at a luxury hotel. Their bond deepens. She presses him for answers about his background, then he finally opens up, describing the militaristic upbringing that shaped him, the autism that isolates him, and the constant tension between logic and emotion. Their moment turns intimate, but Chris pulls away, overwhelmed. Suddenly, he pieces together the robotics case. The theft wasn't about stealing. It was a long con involving reinvestment and false deficits. He begins to track down those responsible. During this time, Medina's investigation leads her to a breakthrough. The accountant is Chris Wolf, operating under multiple aliases, funneling most of his profits into neuroscience research. Back at the hotel, Chris watches Dana sleeping and is struck by another memory, one of his father forcing him and his brother to fight bullies, a twisted lesson in survival. He realizes he must protect Dana by walking away, and quietly, he disappears into the night. As King and Medina lead a raid on Chris's home, they are stunned by what they find: an arsenal, elaborate defenses, and very little trace of a normal life. Meanwhile, Braxton is hired by the robotics company's CEO to install security systems at his home, preparing for an inevitable confrontation. In a moment of trust, King shares with Medina the emotional toll of his pursuit of the accountant, including a close encounter where Chris spared his life after a cryptic question. "Are you a good father?"
Yeah, I've been a good dad.
King took that moment as his turning point. He now wants Medina to inherit his informant, none other than the British voice guiding Chris. Chris eventually confronts Braxton at the CEO's mansion. After a brutal series of takedowns, he reaches his target. But then, something unexpected happens. Braxton recognizes Chris as his long-lost brother. They reconcile after a tense exchange, and when the CEO bursts in, Chris kills him without hesitation. The brothers say goodbye, vowing to meet again soon. In a poignant final sequence, another young boy with autism arrives at the neuroscience center. He wanders into a room and meets a now adult Justine, the girl who once handed Chris a puzzle piece. She's nonverbal, but uses a voice generator. When she speaks, it's the same British voice that's been helping Chris all along.
Hello, Dreamboat. Shall we chat?
Back in her apartment, Dana receives a mysterious delivery: a painting. On closer inspection, she peels back its outer layer to find one of the priceless artworks from Chris's trailer. A quiet message from a man who struggles to express love with words. And so the story ends, not with a grand finale, but with the subtle suggestion that connections, no matter how fragile, endure.